I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. My parents are Bahamian and Haitian, and grew up going to private schools my whole life. I was always one of the few minorities in my school, and so for a really long time, diversity and inclusion was just a huge thing for me. I just felt that a lot of times in my school, we were invisible, we didn't matter, our thoughts or our feelings or our desires weren't attended to, and so diversity has been huge for me ever since. I went to college at Harvard. I ended up majoring in French and African American studies. French because I was just always weirdly obsessed with the French language, and African American studies just dialing back to diversity and inclusion. After college, I dived headfirst into journalism. I've always had a passion for writing and for fashion as well, and that is really where my whole idea for my website, Fashion Bomb Daily, came about. I was working as a journalist, as a magazine editor, really trying to break into fashion. I was told that I didn't have the look. I was looked up and down and told that fashion was not for me. And so in 2006, I decided to create a blog called Fashion Bomb Daily. And my goal with Fashion Bomb was just to address those girls who didn't see themselves in traditional magazines, didn't see themselves in commercials on TV, and just our mantra has always been that fashion is for everyone and we're for the culture, by the culture. And now we're almost 13 years later. We're one of the world's most influential style blogs. We have 1.3 million followers on Instagram. I've been on BET and CNN and in Time Magazine and Elle Magazine, and I've really just been able to create my own movement through digital media. I definitely think there's a glass ceiling. I think that now I've seen a movement towards lots of investments going into online properties and apps, and for some reason I'm seeing my male colleagues who might not have the same following or track record or background get funding before we do, and it's kind of crazy to think sometimes that we have to be so much better, 10 times better, if you're a woman, and then also if you're a woman of color, you have to kind of knock things out of the box to the moon, to the stars in order to be taken seriously. And even when I was growing up, I would tell my dad that I wanted to go to an Ivy League school, and he would tell me, you can go to my friend, my next door neighbor, does admissions at the school, so you can probably get in there. My college counselor didn't think that I would be able to get into an Ivy League school. I think all of my life I've been underestimated and somewhat undervalued, but I've always just had this confidence in myself and this can-do attitude, and I know that I can do it, and I know that if I just continue to work hard and be persistent and consistent, I can break through. I think that there is actually a sort of power in being undervalued, because then you can come back and shock people with what you're actually able to do. And so I take it with stride, but literally all my life I've been thought of as an airhead and, kind of flighty and not that smart, but I love breaking down people's perception and grossly exceeding their expectations. When I think about the gender pay gap, it's not surprising to me. It's disappointing, but I'm familiar with not being treated equally or compensated equally. I feel like I've grown up knowing that things were not going to be equal. A lot of people don't realize that women do have to work harder in order to be taken seriously. Women do have to invest a lot more time and sweat equity before they're given the same respect as their peers. I'm even seeing now women in their 50s and 60s, women that I've looked up to for years, now they're getting those invitations to the Met Gala and the CFDA Awards, and it brings me hope, but it's also, for me, I don't want to wait until I'm 50, 60 years old before I get my flowers. I want them now. Our country and society can show that they're an ally to women by providing education, funding, programs, and grants for female-founded companies so that women can blaze trails, create their own movements, and not be under the auspices of a corporation to determine their worth. I think it's about determining your self-worth.